introduce to you now, well, got a map, let's use it. This is our world. You all have a yearbook. We just printed this last month. You take this home. You don't have to read it now. But in this yearbook, no, you don't have to read it now. It's okay. I don't want to distract you. But you've got it. This map is in there. This explains what we do, how we do it. It's all the products that we released last year, we're selling last year, are profiled in here. Some articles about some folks we've worked with in the past year. But this map is here, and it shows you what we do. I mean, I talked to you about what we do week in, week out in terms of cask assessment and recipe development. These are the places where we source our products. There's the map of Scotland and the distilleries, the towns where the distilleries are that we purchase from. That's Scotland. We're down here in London. This is Scotland here. We're down here in London, the office and the blending rooms. We're buying whiskies from distilleries, as you can see, all across Scotland. We're buying both aged whiskies, okay? The company's only 19 years old, and sometimes we're buying whiskies like in some of these recipes that you're about to drink, some of these whiskeys you're about to drink that are older. They're 22 years old. You know, how do we do that? Well, the distilleries laid it down 22 years ago, and a lot of these distilleries are willing, or the distilling companies are willing to sell to us. The distilleries, blending room, we're also buying new spirit from about half a dozen of these distilleries every year. We go to them, we supply the casks, we source the casks, and we send them to them, and they're filled for us, and we lay them down for the future. And that's how we operate. We're sourcing casks from France. We buy French oak, new French oak made for winemakers, and we bring it to Scotland and have our coopers fashion it into custom-made barrels. We source casks from Spain, primarily from Miguel Martin. And we're sourcing American oak from distilleries in Kentucky and American oak casks. And we have a custom-made cask for us every year in Missouri at Independent Stave. That's our world. That's our world. And that's how we work. Yeah. And these are the people that do it. Yeah. James and I and 15 other folks. All right, let's taste some more whiskey. Now, let's see how this works. 1 was hedonism, yeah? So now we'll go to 2, 3, and 4. That makes sense. That's pretty straightforward. What we're going to taste now is just coming to market. We'll do that one last. We'll play around with the order. It's called Myths and Legends. There are a lot of myths and a lot of legends in Scotch whiskey, yeah? And as we all know, not all myths, most myths, I suppose, by definition, and legends are not necessarily the case. A lot of people think single malts are the best and anything blended is somehow inferior. Well, I think for 19 years we've been working at disproving that. A lot of people think that single malts are very often people think a single malt is just a single cask, but what most people don't realize is that single malts are also the product of blending, or can be the product of blending. For every famous single malt brand, unless we're talking about a single cask, and there aren't any single cask brands, we're talking about distillery bottlings, there's a person responsible for blending the different casks that go into their bottlings, whether it's their 10-year-old, their 15-year-old, their 18, whatever it might be. Yeah. When I worked at that big company many years ago, the same people who were blending things like Johnny Walker and so on were also responsible in many cases for consistency in single malt bottlings, blending different casks, different ages in some cases. Because remember, different types of casks will give different sets of flavors to the whiskey. So if you've got whiskey aged in a first fill American oak barrel, it's going to have different flavors than a whiskey aged in a sherry cask, a sherry butt. A refill, a second-use American oak barrel is going to have different flavors than a first-use American oak barrel, and so on. And for all distilleries in Scotland that we're aware of, yeah, are using all manner of different types of casks. So there's a blending to even single malt bottlings. So let's illustrate that. All right, whiskey number 1 is, whiskey number 2 on your sheet is Myths and Legends 1. Yeah. Okay. And Myths and Legends 1 is a single malt. And for those of you who've been following Compass Box for many years, you might be a little surprised that we would bottle a single malt. Yeah. It's a single malt composed of parcels of whiskey from one distillery that are different ages and different cask types. Yeah. And so what it shows you is that those different parcels of whiskey, the different cask types and the different ages, each have a slightly different personality to them. Yeah. There's an underlying character that is that distillery, but those parcels each have a different personality to them. Yeah. This is the composition. 1, 2, 3 different ages and cask types. I won't go into all the details. It's on our website, and you can go and get some information at the stand just because of time. But what James and Jill were doing when they were putting this together is they were treating these, this might represent, I'm going to make this up, James, roughly how many casks would be in each of those, roughly? Mm-hmm. Right. So maybe 8 to 10 casks and maybe 20 casks. But each of those 20 with a personality different from these. And there are the flavor notes. Can I just pause for a second and have a word with you about age? Because we got in a bit of trouble a few years ago because we historically have given the age of every single whiskey we've ever used in any recipe. We always give you the recipes of everything. It's on the website. And ordinarily what we would do is we'd say, well, we give you that age, and that age, but that's actually illegal. And we did it for 15 years. All of the recipes were on the website. All the ages of all the components were on the website. But somebody reported us to the Scotch Whisky Association, and there's a law, an EU law, that says a spirits producer, Scotch or cognac or anything, can only talk about the age of the youngest component in a blend. Now, we knew about this law, and we ignored it. Because our feeling is that if you're fully transparent with the information, then how could you be misleading people? And that's why the law exists. It was to keep unscrupulous marketers from misleading people. Oh, this whiskey has 60-year-old whiskey in it, when actually they just put in a drop. Now, we challenged it. We started a transparency campaign, and some of you will have signed that petition, and thank you if you did. But the Scotch Whisky Association, based on their members' wishes, decided they didn't want to change that law. We wanted them to change the law. We should not that people should have an obligation to, but producers should have a right to fully disclose what's in a recipe if they want. Now, I'm going to interrupt myself again. Your whiskey number 1, hedonism. In order for us to give you a taste of affinity, please dump out whiskey number 1 right now if you haven't finished it. It's a tasting, not a drinking. And James then will come by and put in your glass number 1 the affinity. Okay, because remember the first bottle was corked. Right, so back to ages. So, to be perfectly legal, I can only tell you the age of the youngest component in this, unless our lawyers tell us that if someone asks us for the ages of the others, we're permitted to tell you. So if someone were to ask me, I could show you the next slide. Thank you. I'm going to use that as a blanket statement for the rest of the day. Okay? And there are the ages. Thank you for asking. 15-year-old, this is from all of these were sourced from the Balblair Distillery. Yeah, the Balblair Distillery. And the components, 15 years old, 16 years old, 22 years old. Recharred American oak barrels, first fill American oak barrel. And you get different sets of characteristics with the different ages and the different cask types. So even in making a single malt like this, there's a blending to it. And what James and Jill did with those different components is work to create a balance that we liked. Yeah. The next whiskey, this is now whiskey number 3 on your mat, is Myths and Legends 2. I said this is a range, yeah? One of the things this shows you, this is a single malt as well, one of the things this shows you is that people think that a lot of people think that there's a regionality, a terroir-like aspect to whiskey, and it's not like wine. It's not like wine. There are local traditions, yeah? For example, on the island of Isla, most of the distilleries, although not all of them, use heavily peated malt to make their whiskey. There are local traditions, but there's not that terroir climatic geographic effect that you have in wine. It's not exactly the same thing. And this kind of illustrates that. You're going to get some almost tropical fruit notes in this Speyside single malt, and people don't associate that with whiskeys from Speyside. Yeah? But again, this is a single malt that is comprised of different ages and different casks of the same single malt, that being a single malt from the Glen Elgin distillery. The Glen Elgin distillery. So quite a few parcels here. 18, 22, 16, 23. Thank you for asking, by the way. 23, 19, and 18. Yeah. Recharred American oak barrel, refill hogshead, recharred barrel, recharred hogshead, refill sherry butt, a small percentage, and recharred American oak barrel. And that little percentage of sherry cask-aged Glen Elgin, 23 years old, creates a lovely, it interacts with some of the other components and creates this lovely, almost those tropical fruit notes. Yeah. Question? The ages of the bulb there? Oh, sorry, I thought I did that. 16, 18, and 20, 21, 22, sorry, yeah. Right, and so myths and legends too. So a single malt, but a single malt composed of different parcels of casks of different ages and different cask types, yeah. And I think James is busy, but I'll speak for him. This was a complicated one to put together. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of recipe iterations over several months to get a balance here and to get. We use the word compelling. It's not just is it good, is it bad, is it interesting. Compelling is what our goal always is in creating a recipe, in creating a whiskey. Compelling. By that we mean a whiskey that will call you back to the glass. Yeah? A whiskey that will make you want to have a second, right? That's what we're looking for, is that kind of compelling character. It's the same in wine. It's the same in any kind of spirit or beer. We love products that have that thing that calls you back to the glass. Compelling character. And you taste in this and the Balblair age. Yeah? The length on the palate here, what we call ethereal character is that taste of age. Yeah. Older is not necessarily better, older is just different. And that's but you are getting here, the taste of age. So, our first two single malts ever, but the product of blending. Myths and Legends 3. We can move now to, this is whiskey number 4 on your mat. Now, at the risk of making your head explode, okay, this one is a blended malt, meaning a blend of single malts. Yeah. Okay. The third one in the Myths and Legends range is a blended malt. And this blended malt is the category name, and that's the category we usually work in, blended malt. And what we've done is we've gone back to the Glen Elgin parcel from the malt whiskey from the Glen Elgin distillery, that parcel that we used for Myths and Legends 2, and we used some of those casks, some of those parcels as the base of Myths and Legends 3. And we brought in a smoke component. To shape it and give it a more dimension. And here we have it. Thank you for asking for the ages, by the way. So Glen Elgin, and then up here, malt whiskey from the Highland Park distillery, from the Kalila distillery, to bring in a smoke character. Yeah. So these aren't all. This isn't all the Glen Elgins that we used in the previous one. It's some similar parcels, but then we shaped it further. We added dimension by bringing in smoke character. Glen Elgin 19, 18, 16, Highland Park 23, aged in a re-charred American oak hogshead, and 15-year-old malt whiskey from the Kalila distillery in a refill sherry butt. All of those components are different flavor dimensions. You bring them together and you create something that is totally yours. Yeah? No single distillery can create that profile. And that's our myths and legends range. Yeah. Who's got a question? Okay. Now, if that didn't make your head explode, the next one certainly will. Right. We're going to go back to the beginning here. Okay. Who's been out to taste some Calvados today from Domaine Christian Drouin? Yeah? Today, yesterday, this weekend? Yeah. Yeah, good. If you have not, please do. Because he's an extraordinary producer. I have loved Calvados. I know it's for years, for 20 years, since I first went to visit a Calvados distillery in Normandy many years ago. And I know Calvados is not cool in France. And I'm sorry about that. Yeah. But I think it's poised to make a comeback. I think it's one of the most underrated of the classic spirits in the world, if you ask me. Yeah. I adore it. And years ago, my wife, Amy, loves to bake, and she loves to bake this time of year, tarte tatin and all sorts of apple things. And what do you drink when you have tarte tatin? You drink Calvados, yeah? It's one of the great, if you ask me, great food and drink combinations in the world. And years ago, Amy would bake the tarte tatin, and I would drink the Calvados, and everybody's happy. Years ago, I started thinking, well, you know what? We make a whiskey called Spice Tree, and some of you will know it. It's a malt whiskey that we finish in new French oak casks that impart a baking spice, clove-like character to the malt whiskey. We call it Spice Tree. So years ago, I thought, that would work well with tarte tatin. So I started drinking Spice Tree with Amy's tarte tatin. And then somewhere along the way, and I cannot honestly remember when it first happened, I walked back into the kitchen to where I keep my whiskeys for everyday drinking, and I grabbed the Spice Tree, and I grabbed some Calvados, and I blended them together in the same glass to have with my second piece of tarte tatin. And I thought it was awesome. Apparently, I can't remember doing this, but I did it at some point. And that's what I did. I started blending Spice Tree and Calvados when Amy would do the apple pastries and the tarte tatin. It was gorgeous. Just on paper, it sounds good. The baking spices of the Spice Tree, the apple character, and the complexity from Calvados, it just sounds lovely. Well, what if you added to that? Okay, so what if you added that sherry cask aged malt whiskey with dried fruit character, sherry wine character? So now you've got dried fruit, clove, spice, and apple. Right? Sounds good. So that's what we did when we made Affinity. So I've been doing this for years, and it took me until about a year or two ago to have the confidence to bottle it. Thierry Benetat, I love Thierry Benetat, La Maison de Whisky. One of the most open-minded people in our industry. He's a hero to me. He came to see me a year and a half ago in London in the blending room, and I said, Terry, I'm going to do this. And for the first time ever, he said to me, don't do that. But we did it anyway. He introduced me to Guillaume Drouin at Domaine Christian Drouin, and I love this. It is unusual. Technically, it's not Scotch whiskey because once you blend or flavor Scotch whiskey with anything else, other than spirit caramel, but that's another story, then it can't be labeled Scotch whiskey. So it's a blend of Calvados, 37.5, 38% Calvados, I think is in the final recipe. And malt whiskeys, as I said, aged in sherry casks and French oak casks. There's the recipe. There's some quite old whiskey in here. And actually, this parcel, the sherry cask parcel, is actually a blended Scotch whiskey that was in sherry, blended and put into sherry butts, refill sherry butts for many years. So you've got a lovely depth from that. You've got some sherry character from that. You've got French oak of different toast levels, clove spice, burnt sugar, notes of fruity, rich pastries. These are James's notes, by the way. And then you bring in the Calvados. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to go home, all right, this week. It's October, right? Apples. It's the season for apples. I want you all to make tarte tatin next weekend, okay? And if you don't have Compass Box Affinity to drink with it, then go buy a bottle of Calvados, okay? I recommend Christian Drouin. In any case, folks, this is some of the things we do. These are a couple of some of the newer limited editions. Hedonism, our grain whiskey, which I love dearly because it was the first thing we ever bottled and because it's delicious, if you ask me. The whole range is available for tasting on the stand. You've got your yearbooks. You've got your fun stickers and stuff. Yeah, if you have any questions, we'll head out and we'll be at the stand after this tasting. But I can take a question or two. I've got 5 minutes, so if anybody's got anything. Yes? Just about, yeah.
My question is, you receive something that you like, something that comes in one week. How do you go back to that? Maybe receiving something 6 weeks later, even 6 weeks down the line. If you guys have the memory flow, you know what, that'll work with that. You know, something that you maybe tasted months before.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the question is, how do we have you've tasting these samples throughout the year, how do you have the memory to go back and think, oh, that sample we tasted 6 months ago, that could work in this recipe? That's just a credit to James's memory, his extraordinary memory. But I think, honestly, I think seriously, you do develop an intuition for things, and with that, I guess just comes a way to categorize things in your mind. And when you do it long enough, and it also helps to have a really good memory. That's why I hire really young people. But does that answer the question? I mean, and you do forget. You do forget, and sometimes like, well, let's go back and retaste those and see what they were like. And, oh yes, it's perfect, or maybe that's not what I thought it would be. Another question?
Is there any exciting things coming up on the horizon for Compass Box?
Yeah, so good question. With the loosening of the regulations for cask types that the Scotch Whisky Association announced earlier this year, is there anything exciting coming up on the horizon from Compass Box or from Diageo? I say that. Well, never mind why I say that. But well, not at the moment. Yeah. So now you can use tequila casks, and now you can use Calvados casks. I'd rather blend the actual Calvados with the whiskey than actually finish whiskey in the Calvados cask. Although, who knows? We haven't tried it. So we don't have anything in the works yet as a result of that, the loosening of the regulations, but you never know. And I will say, though, that I was pleased to see the change in the regulations, whether you think it makes sense or not. I just think it's a demonstration of the more open-minded approach that the Scotch Whisky Association and its members are taking for things like cask maturation. That can only be a good thing, if you ask me. Another question. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.